mental health is very important to all of us in Home Free. 3 of us are married to therapists. The rest of us see therapists. There was a time where it was sort of taboo to admit that you could use some help. And I'm so happy to see that changing, and I hope it continues to change. Because it doesn't matter who you are, you're affected by your own mental health at some point in your life. And at some point, it's a little bit beyond your control. So please, don't be scared to admit that you need a little help.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what Tim was saying. I grew up in a family that never saw a therapist, and it wasn't like we had any particular negative associations with it. We just all thought we were fine. And don't get me wrong, we were fine, but my cousin actually now has a PhD in clinical psychology. And over the course of her education, she would talk to me a lot about the things that she was learning, and I was always so very interested in that. And then eventually, one day, because of that, that was enough for me to go, oh wait, I need therapy. And I'll never forget, I'm not going to get choked up by this, okay. I'll never forget being on tour in Europe and having a really hard time in my personal life at the time, and asking Chance, being like, Chance, you know a lot of people in Nashville, I can't find a therapist, do you know anybody who would know a good therapist? And he made some calls and some texts, and eventually had a couple names for me, which I still see that person regularly. And it is something that I have grown to really appreciate. And I think that the most important thing for therapy, if you're exploring it, if you're curious about it, right? I think the most valuable thing that you can take into that is do it regularly. And whenever you feel good, when you're feeling better through that therapy, that's when you need to go back the most. Because whenever you go to therapy and you're feeling good, that really helps program your subconscious in a way that will lean back into that. So whenever you do get down, because we all do again, life comes in ups and downs, right? You just keep moving through it. But whenever you can program yourself to open up naturally and talk about things that are difficult when you're in a good mood, then when you're in a tough spot, communicating with your therapist can help you so much more. So yeah, just because you think you're doing well doesn't mean that you can't grow so much through therapy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you think you need help, don't be afraid to reach out, and don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong in doing so, or that those feelings aren't important, because they really are.
Yeah, it's not shameful at all. It's not weakness. In fact, I would argue the opposite. I think it takes a lot of strength to admit you need some help. I mean, one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is that there's always room for improvement in your life. I let my ego get in the way for many, many years, and I finally relented a couple of years ago and started seeing a therapist, and I wish I would have done it so long ago. I'm a happier, healthier person. My relationships are stronger than they've ever been. And I just encourage folks to just talk to a stranger about what's going on in your life. You'd be surprised how liberating that is.
I think everyone in the band at varying levels, and I think people in general have always known or understood that, what physical health can do for you, eating right and working out and exercising. And I'm told that there's a great similarity between that and mental health, and I don't think a lot of people know what are the mental activities that you can do, or things that you can do to alleviate mental stress. That's very similar in that way to, you've got physical health and mental health, and they're both equally as important. So I know for me, I've turned off a lot of social media for my mental health, and that's been a tremendous boost to my overall happiness.
Everything in your life affects your mental health, whether you realize it or not. And I think it's also important to not use anyone else as your example of how you should operate in your life. Some people are go-getters, and some people, find different ways to release their stress. And the thing that I learned and have been learning is that I have to do it my own way. Everybody's got their thing that helps them relieve mental stress. And it's important to examine everything in your life and see where it like could be coming from, or what things you might need to be doing more of. And I think that's something that a lot of people may not realize.
It's a scary thing sometimes to admit you're struggling with mental health. Or if you see someone that you think might be struggling with mental health, sometimes it's a scary thing to bring that up to that person. But, if you really care about them, you really don't have anything to lose. So, we all try to look out for each other. We're a family. We usually spend 80% of the year living together. There's an expression: "What's good for the goose is good for the gander." And we try to hold each other accountable, but also just make sure that we're all doing okay mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, there are so many different ways that you can help yourself. You can lean into your own mental health improvement. And for me, probably the largest, the best help I've found personally, a few years ago, maybe about 3 years ago now, I started meditating. It's something that I don't know why. I was always really fascinated with the idea. In my teens and 20s, I really wanted to meditate, and I would do it once in a very blue moon, and I never was quite sure I understood it. And a lot of people think that meditation is closing your eyes, and thinking nothing, calming your brain down to think nothing. And that's not what it is. That's not what it is. Meditation is so much simpler than that, and it's not hard at all. It's just about watching your thoughts happen. And how can you learn this, you might say? Well, where did I learn it? I learned it on YouTube. I just went on YouTube and I started searching videos about meditation, and I did loads and loads of guided meditations to discover what helped me most. And so eventually, over the last couple years, I have gotten into a really good groove where I meditate, I would say 6 out of 7 days a week. And it's gotten to be something that I even crave now, because it fills me with a real peace. And interestingly enough, scientifically speaking, meditation does so many incredible things for your physiology, and it'll even increase serotonin and dopamine without having to have any other stimulus to do that. Just from breathing alone, you can do that. So there are so many ways that you can help yourself, and meditation, I think, is a really great one. It's been wonderful for me.
I think it's important that everybody finds that thing,
Yeah.
whatever that is in your life.
It can be playing an instrument.
Yeah.
It can be working out.
It could be reading a book. It could be watching TV and not thinking, using your brain at all. It could be anything.
Can it be eating?
It could be eating, yeah.
Yeah, one thing, when this pandemic hit, I felt myself becoming very anxious, and my anxiety was getting pretty intense, and it was because I was focusing on all these things that were out of my control. I was worrying about what other people were doing. I was worrying about what we were going to do as a band, how we were going to keep touring and things like that. Just a lot of stress. And I found when I could just focus on the things that were in my control, that it brought my anxiety down. I stopped looking at Twitter right before bed and seeing all this terrible stuff that's going on. I decided to start reading a book every night for an hour before I go to bed. And it's been a huge difference for me.
I think human interaction is important too. There's exceptions to the rule. Some folks are introverts, but typically even those folks need some degree of human interaction, and that's been very tricky over the last year and a half. We find ourselves on our devices a lot, and we're on something that is sort of ironically called social media, because there's really nothing less social than staring at your phone alone. Mm-hmm. And that can be a way to connect with people as well, but I think we need to hear human voices. Some of us need to see human faces. Some of us need physical touch, and you got to figure out what is important to you and what's best for you, and then figure out a way to safely seek all that stuff out. But don't be afraid to reach out to one another. I think one thing I've learned over the last couple of years, as I've grown and as I've seen a therapist and become healthier mentally and emotionally, is is just realizing that there's always room for improvement, and that, well, yeah, basically that's it. I'm just going to do that again. One thing that I've learned over the last couple of years after having seen a therapist and just opening up to ways I can grow mentally and emotionally is realizing that even at my best, there's still room for improvement. There are a lot of things that I thought maybe I was completely recovered from throughout my life, and I'm realizing that's not the case. And some of those things can really hold you back in ways that you don't even realize. So I encourage anyone, no matter how mentally healthy you think you are, to reach out to somebody and see the ways in which you can grow.